This is going to be a bit of a rant, and I do apologise for that in advance, but there has been something that has been bugging me for a little while. It's an argument I see made quite often, especially when I'm discussing games like Fallout 4, and that is the argument that, well, Bethesda or insert game studio here had to dumb down the game to appeal to a wider audience, to appeal to the mainstream audience. And I just reject this argument for a couple of reasons. The first reason is the entire concept that something needs to be dumb to have mainstream appeal. People are not dumb. I know people like to make this kind of sweeping generalization. It used to be casual gamers we used to look down our noses on. Casual gamers. This is for casual gamers, not like me. No, it's for casual gamers. And then we found out that casual gamers probably played about 2 or 3 hours a day games anyway, and therefore the entire concept of calling them casual gamers was nonsensical. And if you mean by mainstream, well, you know, we mean just like a shooter, a basic shooter that doesn't require any thinking, well, then stop calling it mainstream. Say they turned it into a shooter because they thought it would have wider appeal, because there are different mainstreams. There is mainstream FPS games, those would be your Battlefields and your CODs and that sort of thing. And then there's mainstream tactical games, strategy games, mainstream RPGs. Yes, that's right, RPGs are perfectly mainstream. They are not a niche genre, they are not special. There are loads of them, they're extremely popular, and they sell extremely well. And I have to tell you now, games like Fallout 4 were about as mainstream as you could get. They were pretty... I mean, you could argue that Fallout originally, when it first came out, was a bit of a niche game, mostly because not that many people knew about its existence, although even then I'd say it was reasonably popular. Fallout 3 changed that, it kind of made it a little more mainstream, a little better known. But by the time Fallout 4 came out, Fallout may well have been one of the most well-known, franchised, expected series that has ever been out. As RPGs go, Fallout had become so mainstream, everybody knew about it. It was the epitome of AAA mainstreaminess. It really was. They didn't need to make it any more mainstream for RPG gamers. It wasn't too complicated or too niche for RPG gamers. And if your argument is, well, they tried to make it a shooter because they thought they would sell more as a shooter than an RPG, I want to know where you're getting your figures from and why you think trying to sell something that everyone's expecting an RPG from is going to do better if you make it into a shooter. I don't see the logic behind that. I can't imagine droves of COD players going, really? They've converted it into an FPS game? Oh, well, we're just going to drop COD and play Fallout instead. I just don't see this argument holding much water. And then there's the they needed to do this to get wider appeal argument, which makes no sense to me whatsoever, because Fallout 4 quite possibly had the widest appeal any game had had. I mean, if by wide you mean it had a huge number of people who it appealed to. This was probably one of the most highly anticipated games of 2015, maybe even the century. The E3 that year was dominated by talk of this game. People had been waiting for this game for such a long time. It was a guaranteed sale. They did not have to do anything to this game to give it more widespread appeal. It was appealing to a lot of people. A massive amount of appeal this game already had. And some people have even argued, well, you can see that in actual fact it was successful based upon the sales. It was the most sold Fallout game. Yeah, it was sold out on day one. It was pre-ordered like no other game, not because of the changes they made to Fallout 4, but because of the expectations built up from Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and even Skyrim. The appeal this game had, the sales this game had, were due to the previous games I just mentioned. Expectations built up from those games. They did not have to dumb anything down. They did not have to change the genre from RPG to shooter. They did not have to do anything to make this game sell beyond make a Fallout game. That's all they had to do to give this mainstream widespread appeal. All they had to do was put Fallout in the title, and expectations from previous games would do the rest. So I'm sorry, I don't buy any of these arguments. These oh well, it's all about corporate greed. They thought they could do better by making it a shooter game that's dumbed down for mainstream appeal. It just doesn't make sense. A far more logical explanation is they made these changes because they honestly thought people would like them more. They listened to the criticisms people have been throwing at all of their games, Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and they tried to address them. They addressed the criticism that they get for their dialogue and their main quest. They addressed the criticism that Fallout 3 got, which was that its FPS mechanics were not good. They listened to the criticisms that were being thrown at them en masse, and they responded to them hoping that they would do better and people would love their game. The problem is they weren't paying attention to the silent majority who were giving them oodles of praise of the silent kind of praise that comes when people are busy still playing your games and don't have time to troll the forums. That's my opinion. They listened to criticism and tried to fix it. I think they had the best of intentions. They just misjudged the situation. It's no more complicated than that. It's not some conspiracy of the corporate world to try and eke money out of disenfranchised COD gamers by abandoning the RPG gamers. They just messed up. That's all. They misjudged what people wanted based upon the complaints that they were receiving in droves, and you know they were. You know people were criticizing them for the exact things that they tried to improve in Fallout 4. It's not a coincidence. So in recap, Bethesda Gaming Studios is a mainstream development company. They make mainstream games. Skyrim, they make, the Elder Scrolls, Fallout. These are mainstream franchises with massive, wide appeal and have had massive, wide appeal for a long time. Any failings Fallout 4 has are due to them misjudging what it was their fanbase liked and what their fanbase wanted changing. Probably because they spent way too much time listening to people complain about certain aspects and not enough trying to figure out why people were still obsessed with their games 5 and 6 years after they were released, even though they were getting criticised for X, Y, and Z. And if you are wondering why on earth are you ranting about this now, it's because I'm already working on the next video in the Elder Scrolls formula where I discuss what I want to see in the Elder Scrolls 6, and I'm trying to head off all the comments that are going to be along the lines of, well, they're probably going to dumb this down to give it mainstream appeal, to get wider appeal. I want this video so I can just keep linking it to people, because the Elder Scrolls already has an enormously wide appeal. They do not need to do anything to get that appeal broader. They do not need to dumb anything down, and I'm almost worried here that if people keep saying this, Bethesda might start believing it. They might start hearing people go, well, they keep doing this, they keep dumbing it down to get more appeal, and Bethesda might think, really? Will that work? So if we dumb it down, will we get more people buying the game? No. That is not what will make the next Elder Scrolls successful. Do not try to appeal to this mainstream wide appeal that you already have. You already have about as wide appeal as you're going to have. If you change the genre of games so you're appealing to, say, shooters, you will lose appeal to RPGers. And maybe there are more shooters in the world, more people who play shooter gamers. I don't know the figures on this, but I suspect there are probably way more games saturating that market, and they have probably been developed by teams who are experts at it. You are one of the big players in the RPG market. You have the mainstream in that market, the widest appeal I can imagine in that market. Stick to it. Do not listen to the complaining, do not listen to the people telling you you have to dumb your game down to get wider appeal. You make the Elder Scrolls 6 and it has the same characteristics, the same experience that we got in Skyrim, Oblivion and Morrowind, and it will sell. It will sell unbelievably well. It will sell in record numbers because it will be mainstream and have wide appeal. Thank you very much for listening.